Joining us now, former minority leader in the Georgia House of Representatives, Stacey Abrams. She's the founder of Fair Fight Action and Fair Fight 2020 to promote fair elections across the country, and author of the new book entitled Our Time Is Now: Power, Purpose, and the Fight for a Fair America. It certainly is now. Great timing for this book, for this message, and to have you on the show, Stacey Abrams. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
I want to start with Donald Trump tweeting in the past hour this: rigged 2020 election. Millions of mail-in ballots will be printed by foreign countries and others. It will be the scandal of our times. And he got the caps lock stuck again. Stacey Abrams, is this going to be the scandal of our times, or is the president trying to set up something here potentially to try and undermine the process?
It's entirely his intent to undermine the process of voting, because he understands and has admitted that if Americans who are eligible to vote cast their ballots, he will lose. But we know that vote by mail is a critical part of how voting has to occur in 2020 to ensure that as many people as possible can vote safely from home. But it's not only about those who can vote safely from home. As many people as who can vote through vote by mail, that reduces the number of people who have to be in line. But there are populations that have no choice. There are folks who are disabled, who have been displaced by COVID, who are homeless, who have language barriers. And if you're African American or Latino, you're twice as likely to have your absentee ballot rejected. If you're young, you're 5 times as likely to have that ballot rejected. And so there are some people who have no choice but to show up in person. And we want vote by mail to reduce the number of people who have to be in line on Election Day. That keeps everyone safe, and that means our democracy can work.
Our military does it. The president does it. His press secretary votes by mail. It has been a proven process that happens in every election. But what needs to happen to protect it this time around? Because clearly the process is being undermined from the top, the president of the United States himself.
We know that 34 states allow vote by mail with no excuses, which means at this moment, if you want to vote by mail in 34 states, you can do it, and they have the capacity to do so. What they don't have is the ability to scale it as high as we know need will likely be. We have 16 additional states that require an excuse, often either disability, age, or infirmity. And unfortunately, about 4 of those states are immovable on the use of COVID-19 as a justifiable infirmity to qualify you for mail-in ballots. But we know that the challenge is not whether you have access alone, it's whether the states can meet the scale. And we know that states are crippling. They are under a crippling debt because of the tax implications of the COVID-19 pandemic. They are cash-strapped. And to scale appropriately, they need the Senate to take action. The adoption of the HEROES Act, which will provide $3.6 billion in funding for elections, as well as guardrails so that no matter where you live in the country, for the first time, we have uniformity in how elections happen. And this would also provide opportunities for communities that have too many restrictions on their access to have those restrictions actually meet a national standard. All it takes is action by the U.S. Senate, and we know that Mitch McConnell, unfortunately, recognizes that he, too, would be in jeopardy, because if we have full participation, when Americans speak right now, they're speaking with a single voice saying it is time for change.
So, actually, this is the first time you've been on since the debacle in Georgia, election debacle. What happened? What can we learn from it? What are your thoughts on that?
In Our Time Is Now, I spend a great deal of time, the first half of the book, laying out that what we call voter suppression, which is the impediment to any eligible voter being able to cast their ballot because of administrative action, that those impediments are alive and well in Georgia and around the country. But what happened in Georgia was a combination of both the malfeasance of intentional voter suppression as well as the incompetence of the Secretary of State. He purchased more than $100 million worth of machines, but failed to do the training, to do the investment, to do the direction necessary for those machines to be operable in all of the counties in the state of Georgia. And we have 159 counties. We had 20 counties that had to seek judicial orders to extend the time of the elections, and that included Republican-run counties, Democrat-run counties. It included communities that were majority-minority, communities that were majority-white. It was a complete and utter meltdown because the Secretary of State abdicated his responsibility and showed a deliberate indifference to the needs of voters.
Eddie Glaude, jump in.
First of all, it's wonderful to see you. I hope you're safe and everyone's healthy. I want to pan out a bit and talk about it. What does it mean our time is now? We just heard the president in Tulsa. We heard the culture wars. We see the possibility of cheating happening. The scale of our problems is enormous. What do you think? Just give me a sense of the scale of the solutions. What does it mean to say in this moment, our time is now, given the scale of the problems we face right now?
Challenges overwhelm us often because we don't know what they are. It's one of the reasons President Trump is having such a difficult time with testing. Testing shows us where the problems lie. It shows us where we need to focus our attention. And what our time is now tries to do is two things. One, articulate and lay out in very strong detail, here's what we face. Challenges with the ability to register and stay on the rolls, with the ability to cast a ballot and to have that ballot counted, and that this is an historical challenge that we've had in our nation since its inception. But then I spend the second half of the book laying out our opportunities. One is participation in the 2020 census. I've spent a lot of time talking about Fair Fight and Fair Fight 2020, but I also want to lift up a second organization I created called Fair Count, whose sole purpose is to ensure that we have an accurate count, because our time is now, because Georgia and the United States is hitting an inflection point demographically. This is an inflection point where people of color, where young people, where single white women, where whites of progressive and moderate bent can come together and actually move this country forward with progress. And let's be clear, conservative tends to refer to keeping things as they are. Progressive simply means we want to expand access to opportunity in this country. And I spend the second half of the book really laying out the changes we can make, embracing identity as politics that works, because it has worked for a certain community for the last 240 years. Now is time for identity to work for all of us. And we saw that on display last week when the Supreme Court acknowledged that the sexual orientation and gender identity was covered by the 1964 Civil Rights Act, when they expanded and protected DACA students and young people. We know that dreamers are part of the identity of America. We know that the LGBTQ community is a part of the identity of America. And the racial protest we see, that's part of finally reckoning with the identity of America. Our time is now is not to say that any one community will have primacy, but that everyone will have opportunity.
Stacey, Mike Barnicle has the next question. Mike?
Ms. Abrams, policing in America would be one of those challenges. Do you have any specific thoughts on how America redefines police work in communities large and small?
Absolutely. We need to do two things. One is reformation. That means changing the rules for how policing happens in communities. That means banning chokeholds and other forms of lethal engagement. It means reducing the use of excessive force. It means increasing the training time in the United States, which is one of the lowest in the industrialized, democratized world. It means ending qualified immunity. But it also means investing in making sure that we do not have social workers with guns responding to problems across this country. Reformation means fixing the policies and behaviors of our law enforcement. But transformation also means resetting our mindset about how we redistribute resources in this country, investing in education, investing in healthcare, investing in affordable housing, investing in community programs that we know work, because in communities that are successful, that are stable, that have access, we see a reduced necessity for policing. We have to do both reformation and transformation, and we have to resist this false dichotomy that it's one or the other. This is a both-and solution to the challenges that have plagued this country from the beginning.
All right, the book is Our Time Is Now, Power, Purpose, and the Fight for a Fair America. Stacey Abrams, thank you so much for coming on the show this morning. Great to have you.
Thank you so much.
And coming up, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti joins the conversation. And as we go to break, there's a lot going on this week at KnowYourValue.com. Former health commissioner and frequent Morning Joe guest, Dr. Lena Wen, tells me her top tips to safely socialize amid COVID-19 now that states are easing restrictions on gatherings. Gender economist Katika Roy lays out a blueprint to create a workplace that truly values black women. And Kim Churches, CEO of the American Association of University Women, tells us what the women in the class of 2020 really want. Check it all out at knowyourvalue.com. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.